Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello everyone, welcome to Fallout Spoilers. This will be the last video. The last deck was spoiled today, so hope you all enjoy. Vault 13, Dweller's Journey. Chapter 1, each player exiles up to one other target enchantment or creature that player controls until the vault leaves. Chapter 2, gain 2 life, scry 2, and then on the final chapter, turn 2 cards, exile of Vault 13 to the battlefield under their owner's control, and put the other rest on the bottom of their owner's libraries. You take away 4 things, and then you hook yourself up, obviously, and then you hook up the player who's the bottom of the pack. It's a 2-for-1 spell, which is on rate for what I like. 2 mana to take away something. If it takes away more, then the rate still stays the same at 4 mana. Cool Saga, Arcade Ganon. Draw a card then discard, put a quest counter on Arcade. Once during each of your turns, may cast an artifact or human spell from your graveyard with mana value less than or equal to the number of quest counters on Arcade Ganon. I like the flexibility that you get artifacts and humans spells, so that could probably equate to a lot of permanence in your deck, and the drawing and discarding lets you kind of control what you put into your graveyard. Cool guy, Brotherhood Vertibird.
Get to the chopper!
Powers equal to the number of artifacts you control, and has crew too. In an artifact deck, I feel like this thing could get pretty scary real fast. I like any artifact that scales off of other artifacts, and the reason why they get big so fast is because they're so cheap CMC wise to play. That's part of why Urza Saga is so good, because it makes that star golem. It gets out of hand real fast with just even 2 of them in play. This kind of does the same kind of thing, only you're paying mana and it has more evasion with flying. Behemoth of Vault 0. On enter you get 4 energy, and then on death you may pay any amount of energy equal to target non-land permanent's mana value when you do destroy that permanent. It's like a conditional Meteor Golem. Yeah, Meteor Golem's 3/3. This is a 6/6 with trample, so a little bit better with the conditions of what you could blow up. It's a mana cheaper, but you're limited based on the number of energy you have. In the right decks, if you're playing a bunch of energy, it's fine, but the more competitive play, it's not the best because it's expensive to play for an effect that you could probably get for cheaper and it's more consistent. But at the same time, most of everyone else's permanents are 4 or less mana, so effectively in those competitive load the ground decks, you hit everything with just 4 energy probably. Electro Siphon. Counter target spell and you get energy equal to the mana value. Very niche and specific in what you could play this card in. Synth Eradicator. 3/3 for 3 with haste. When it attacks, exile the top card of your library, you may get 2 energy. If you don't, you may play that card this turn and then tap it for 3 energy. You get to deal 3 damage to any target. This card has a lot of flexibility. It's either a card advantage piece or a removal piece. I wish the payment option was a little bit better because 3 energy feels kind of clunky. If this is the only thing generating you energy, you have to attack twice and then you have the ability to pull the trigger and activate this. I would almost always go for the exiling the top card every single time. I'd probably only go for the activated ability if I was in a tough spot. Sultron Dominator. Enters, get 2 energy. Whenever an artifact creature you control attacks, you may pay 1. If you do, put your choice of a +1/+1 counter, first strike, or trample counter on that creature. It doesn't just soup up itself, it could soup up any artifact creature. I think that's the significant part about this thing. You just need to make the energy to get that attack trigger. This only lasts for 2 creatures on its own, so you need a whole deck built around it. Robo Brain Warmind. Power equal to cards in hand. When it enters the battlefield, you get amount of energy equal to the number of artifact creatures you control. Whenever Warmind attacks, you may pay 3 energy. If you do, draw a card. It's kind of strange that it cares about so many different things. I guess it opens up the playability of this thing. You can play it in decks where you care about having a massive hand size, or you can play it in decks that want a bunch of energy. It makes it a little less niche, I think. The Pridewind Steel Flagship
is filled with non-flammable helium.
Flying, it's a vehicle. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 white human knight. This creature gets +2/+2 as long as there's an artifact that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. But the 2/2 is big enough to crew this 6/6 with flying. Once you continually make these knight tokens, you could use the ones that are summoning sickness to crew this. So you attack with the flagship and then you attack with the, the less summoning sick tokens. They turn it to 4/4, so you cast non-token artifacts. Sentry Bot gets 1 less to cast for each creature attacking you, and then you get an energy for each creature attacking attacking you. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 3. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This thing only has 2 power, so you may be able to kill something. At the very least, you could soak up 4 damage. But if this gets reduced by 4, I have a imagination that you'll be tagged for a lot of damage anyways, and I wonder if this is even good enough. It's a very situational and time restrictive card, even though it has flash. It's almost like, when else would you play this? You know what I mean? Like, if it's not in combat, the flash almost doesn't mean a whole lot. The ETB trigger, like, I was hoping that the energy was static, but it's not. It's only on ETB, so that's a real bummer too. I wish it was a gift that kept on giving. Brotherhood Scribe. Metalcraft, you get to tap it, gain an energy. Only activate if you have 3 artifacts. Whenever you get an energy during your turns, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Because it says 1 or more, you want to break up the energy acquisition. So if you get 3 energy in one sitting, you only get 1 +1/+1 buff. But if you get 3 instances of energy, your stuff will get +3/+3. Just keep that in mind when you're trying to maximize your value from this card. Automated Assembly Line. Whenever 1 or more artifact creatures control deal damage to a player, you get an energy. Pay 3, create tapped 3/3 colorless robot artifact creature token. In a single turn, because you only have 3 opponents typically, at max you'll generate 3 energy, and then that pays and do its bottom ability, and you get to make another artifact token for the cause. Cool artifact. Helios 1. It's a utility land. You could make an energy for 1 mana, or you could pay 3 and pay X energy. Destroy target non-land permanent with mana value X. Ooh, that's kind of nice. I like that. See, this spell has like a number, or in this case it's X, next to the energy, and everyone understands what's going on. I wish they were doing this for everything with an energy requirement. I think everyone would get it. But that's just me. It's a cool land in that you get to destroy something. You're using this as one of your mana sources, so collectively you'll have to use up 4 mana to make this ability happen, but having access to it is quite nice. And that it hits any non-land permanent, quite useful. Valcap Blast. Has improvise, cost gets reduced by tapping artifacts. Does 5 damage to any target. If excess damage is dealt to a permanent this way, just create that many tap treasure tokens. Motherlode Excavator. Enters battlefield, choose target opponent. You get an amount of energy equal to the number of non-basics they have. Whenever Motherlode attacks, you may spend 4 energy. If you do, destroy target non-basic land defending player controls, and creatures that player controls without flying can't block this turn. Pretty nice. It basically protects your Excavator, makes it so it's a lot harder to die in combat unless your opponent has a bunch of stuff, big stuff with flying. It could block this, but I like that you could blow up a land. I like that you get a ton of energy from this, probably because there's always at least one person that has like 20 non-basic lands in play, and the more competitive a player is, the more likely that's to happen. Sentinel Sarah Lion has haste. As long as an artifact enters the battlefield this turn, creatures you control get +2/+2. It's a nice anthem effect. Whenever it and at least 2 other creatures attack, it deals damage equal to the number of artifacts you control to target player. Ooh. I love these artifact count matter kind of cards because it's, like I said earlier, the easiest permanent to get a massive amount of into play. Red Death Shipwrecker.
It's like crab, talk like people. Crab people.
You could tap it to go to creature and opponent controls. That player draws a card and you generate a red. I don't like letting people draw cards. I think it's a hug card, and yet it's also not, because you're forcing a creature to attack, and if it's a very important creature that they don't want to lose, it's effectively a removal spell. But the other trade-off is you get a mana, so it's like 2 positives and 1 negative, and in the end you come out on top. This is probably a slight hug card I can get behind. James Wandering Dad. Investigate X times with its adventure, and then you could tap him on its creature side to activate abilities. You could use the tap activated ability to pay for the clues that you made from his adventure side. Sean, Father of Synths. Whenever you attack, you may create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of target attacking legendary creature other than Sean, except it's a non-legendary and is a synth artifact in addition to its other type. When Sean leaves the battlefield, exile all synth tokens. Dang. It's already pretty fair because you only get to make one and you can't copy himself. And then it sucks that you lose everything. It's like cutting off the head of the snake. Kiri Emergent Intelligence. When it deals damage to a player, draw cards equal to its base power. Okay, so that means you can't pump this up and draw a bunch of cards. Exile another non-token artifact creature you control. Kiri becomes a copy of that exiled creature. Except it has whenever this creature deals damage to a player, draw cards equal to its base power. The 2 mana activation is instant speed, so like if you're about to lose a particular artifact creature, you can change this into that, and then you get this, like, get a roundabout way of maintaining a copy. It's just a weird way of doing it. Whenever a equipped creature attacks with Plasma Caster, you get 2 energy, and then you may spend 2 energy. Choose target creature that's blocking equipped creature, flip a coin. If you win the flip, exile the chosen creature, otherwise it deals 1 damage to it. I forget how plasma weapons work, but you could just turn people into bones.
No, it ain't happening. No, it didn't happen.
And that's where the exile kind of flavor comes into play. Nerd Rage. Enters battlefield, draw 2. Enchanted creature has, you have no max hand size, and whenever this creature attacks, you have 10 or more cards in hand. It gets +10/+10 to end of turn. Getting to 10 cards is not that hard to do. I like that it nets you cards and that it doesn't force you to discard, so I kind of want to play this in Brago. I can't get enough effects like this in the Brago deck, so it'll also make Brago a heck of a lot more threatening. Nightkin Ambusher has Ward 2. When it enters the battlefield, target player gets 4 rads. Hell yeah. Can't be blocked as long as the defending player has a rad counter. Getting a rad counter on all your opponents isn't that hard to do. That, and it puts a significant amount on a single player. You could flicker him, put more onto people. I like this card. It's pretty dope. He also has Ward 2. What's not to like about that? Marcus the Mutant Mayor. Vigilance and Trample. Whenever a creature you control deals damage to a player, draw a card if that creature has a +1/+1 on it. If it doesn't, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It's like a bigger and more fair version of, I forget the 3-drop elf that does this for everybody, but this just makes it so it's just for you, and it makes your stuff even bigger. If you don't draw the card, I imagine those decks may or may not appreciate this. I don't know. It's hard to beat 3 mana comparatively to 5. Maybe those decks will just slot him in there. They'll have 2 pieces of drawing from their creatures connecting to players instead of just 1. Tame Drink, draw X cards. You get half of X rad counters rounded up. Even if you sink 8 into this, you're only going to get 4 rad counters. So that's not a bad deal. And if you use your graveyard just as much as your hand, you will still appreciate the mill trigger. I think this card is better than what people think it is. Tasker list that I built for someone recently, and I think it'd fit quite nicely in that deck. Tato Farmer. Landfall, when a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may get 2 rad counters, and then you could tap it to put a land from a graveyard that was milled this turn onto the battlefield under your control tapped. I like that it says try 1. They're disgusting. It really does kind of feed into itself, and I like that it's a May effect. You don't have to put 2 rad counters on yourself, but if you ever wanted to, the option is there. Strong the Brutish Thespian. Ward 2, whenever Strong is dealt damage, you get 3 rad counters, put on 3 +1/+1 counters on them, and then you gain life rather than lose life from radiation. Hell yeah. Without love, can't get enough. So you just want to rack it up on yourself. That's awesome. And you get stronger out of the deal. I kind of want to build this deck like as him as a commander. That'd be hilarious. Could damage himself with your own tools to make him bigger faster instead of relying on combat. Because people aren't going to just willingly attack you into a 7/7 just at its base and then make him bigger. Glowing One. Death Touch, when it deals damage to a player, they get 4 rad counters. Holy cow. Whenever a player mills a non-land card, you gain 1 life. Yesterday I was talking about if you're doing the radiation game, putting stuff on yourself almost doesn't matter if you can break the symmetry. This guy and Strong, that is how you break the symmetry of radiation. The other ways you break it is by proliferating everyone else's counters. I like that we have at least 2 options outside of just proliferation. Cathedral Acolyte. Each creature control with a counter on it has Ward 1, and then you could tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature that entered the battlefield this turn. It's just a fine and okay value. Since you can only tap them once, you're only get 1 counter out of it, but the Ward 1, it's almost negligible in EDH because everyone's got incredible amounts of mana in the mid to late game. Ward 1 is typically meaningless. Screeching Scorch Beast. Whenever attacks, each player gets 2 rad counters. Whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, you may create that many 2/2 black zombie mutant tokens. Do this only once at each turn. So this card specifically wants large swaths of mill, because then you get that many black demons. If someone were to mill and then mill again in that same turn, you only get the first trigger. Hopefully that first trigger is a big one. People could play around this and purposely mill themselves for like one, and then when they get to the rad trigger, mill a bunch, and then you'll effectively get nothing out of it. Has some fair play to it. It's pretty scary. For 6 mana, it puts 2 counters on everybody, every combat. It's also a 5/5. That's another way you could manipulate the effectiveness of rads, is just doing damage to people, because if they have less life to work with, that means they can afford less triggers from the rads itself. That's one way to break symmetry in terms of the rad game. Infesting Rad Roach. Flying can't block. When it deals damage to a player, they get that many rad counters. Whenever an opponent mills a non-land card, if Infested Roach is in your graveyard, you may return it to your hand. Hell yeah, you can't kill a cockroach. I like that we get a scaling piece, kind of like the zombie from earlier. This wants to be enchanted or equipped and made into something really big, because once it connects to someone, you put that many rad counters on someone. I think this card's way better than it looks. Pretty damn good for an uncommon, and then it gets to come back when someone mills a non-land card. Grave Titans getting a Pip-Boy version. Pretty dope art. Myra Lurk Queen. Vigilance 4/4. Enters. Target player gets 2 rads. Whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, you get to draw and put a +1/+1 counter on the queen. This ability only triggers once a turn. By the time you get around to your turn, hopefully you've hit a +1/+1 counter and drawn a card on each person's turn. So on a Revolution of the Table, you'll put 4 counters on this and see 4 more cards than everybody else. That's pretty wild. Pretty likely if you have a lot of rad counters on everybody, this thing's pretty darn good. Jason Bright, Glowing Prophet. Whenever a zombie or mutant you control dies, if its power was different from its base power, draw a card. Come fly with me. Sacrifice a creature for 2 mana. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control against flying till end of turn. It really feeds into that top ability a lot. You sack something, you put a counter and alter its power, and then when that dies in the future, you draw. You'll always have something to sacrifice and get value out of, and make something else slightly bigger to trigger its top ability to be sacrificed later if you ever need to. Elder Owen Lion. Artifacts you control of Ward 1. When it enters the battlefield or dies, return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Another nice value piece. It's pretty fair, pretty powerful for an uncommon, so got no complaints from me. Vault 12, the Necropolis. Each player gets 3 rads, and then Chapter 2, create X 2/2 black zombie mutant creature tokens for X total number of rad counters among players. That could be a lot. If this is the only thing that's applied rad counters, once you get to Chapter 2, you will get a minimum 12 2/2 zombies.
The zombie horde roars!
Chapter 3, you put 2 counters on each creature control that's a zombie or mutant. Damn, you'll have 12 4/4s. That might be a lethal attack for some people. This might be a black staple, I think. Harold and Bob, First Newmans. Vigilance and Reach when... What the hell? So on its first death, it becomes an Orin enchantment that targets a forest. That forest lets you tap for 3 mana, and then on activation, you also put 2 rads on yourself. Should this die again, it loses all of the abilities and it can't come back. A complicated text. There's a lot of commas in there. I wonder how much play this will see. And I imagine in a game of Commander, there's going to be a lot of like time spent reading this card based on its death trigger. Lumbering Mega Sloth. Costs 1 less for each counter among players in permanence. Trample 8/8, and it enters the battlefield tap. Makes sense for a sloth. Probably going to get a really cheap 8/8 body with trample, tapped claws. It's almost negligible for how powerful that is. Master Transcendent. Enters, target player gets 2 rads, and then tap to put target creature card in a graveyard that was milled this turn onto the battlefield under your control. This guy steals people's creatures. If you manage to get Seedborn in play on everybody's turn, potentially stealing someone's creature. The only thing that changes is its creature type and its power and toughness, but it still has all the ETB triggers, all the activated abilities. Pretty significant. And that brings us to the end of the Fallout spoilers. I hope you all enjoyed my series if you stuck around this long. I hope you all enjoyed the apocalypse come March 8th. And don't forget to subscribe, check out my other things. I also want to take the time to thank everybody, all the support I've gotten. I'm really close to hitting the 500 mark. It's been a long ride. I think I've been doing this for a year now. I'm not going anywhere. Everyone take care now. Bye.